because I would have been stressing either the metal or the plastic, and that can lead to fracture. And this again isn't a high stress part, so not really a problem. Okay, Wolfie, thank you for dropping in. Nice to see you again. Yeah, you go give them hell, as they say. And I look forward to seeing you some other time. Bye. Right, now that I've got that side in, I can put the other side on. Now this is sort of where it just kind of happens, because now, literally, it's kind of like this should more or less just drop in, more or less. There and there, and we'll just bolt that together, and the main chassis is together. So this is, as I mentioned, it kind of happens fairly quickly at this point. This section, it'll go from a pile of bits on the desk to suddenly having a main frame. Now, one of the things I will do, you've got to make sure you put the right number of screws in as well, because some of them you've got to remember have threads behind them, and you don't necessarily want to put a screw into the thread. You definitely don't want to put a screw into the thread. You also want to put the screws in the right way and actually get them in the hole. Cue Keith Appleton's girlfriend joke. If you're interested in mechanical modelling and steam engines, check out a YouTube channel for Keith Appleton. He builds / repairs live steam engines. So the things that you see riding around in fair, you can ride on in fairs and things, and other places, or ride behind, I suppose is the technically correct. I'm not tightening these down at the moment, I'm just putting them all in, screwing them mostly home. I will then tighten them down once they're all in place, just in case tightening one down sort of pulls the frame such that a screw won't go in or something like that. So start with them all loosish, put the screws in, you can then come back and tighten them all up. Because sometimes you can't perfectly align everything, but putting the screws in sort of pulls everything into alignment. And this truck isn't so bad in that I can just about get it on in the frame. The Scania was a bit harder to do from that because it's about another 4 or 5 inches longer, because it's got an extra axle on the back. Now then, I can now tighten these down. And you may get tired of me hearing me say it, but you just nip these down, you're not yanking them down. They don't need to hold 10-ton weights. And you don't want to strip the plastic, which is incredibly easy to do sometimes. I wouldn't choose to use a power screwdriver for this. You could. Just make sure you've got the torque setting probably on the lowest possible setting, because a power driver will strip these plastic threads really easily. I mean, I'm stood up at a desk and it's a little bit tiring with the screwdriver, but just a little bit. That's the main chassis together. Now then, what I'm going to do is put 2 more screws in here which hold the servo in place. And that's the end of this particular part. Or step. Again, to allow for alignment, I'll put the other one in. Before tightening them both down, and I'll tighten the one at the other side down as well. Okay, that's the main chassis. That's actually the right way up for it. It does sit that way up. And that's what we mount everything off against it now. So front steering wheels, rear axle, the engine goes in the middle, gearbox is there as well. So put this to one side and we start building the next part. Yeah, we've got time to do that. So we kind of build now sort of the a piece which changes, redirects the steering rods, so that because the servo sits on the side of the frame. The servo we've just put in, most people would tend to assume that's the steering axle, the steering servo. You just put them in the middle. Not on this truck. That one that's just gone in is the gear change servo. The steering servo sits on one side, so it needs a push rod assembly to move it to the right place. And so we're going to start by building that push rod assembly, which is this section here at the top. There is glare on this, isn't there? But I can zoom in, but if I zoom in you don't see most of what's happening on the desk. So we need parts from the C, which is this one, C frame. So it's C6, that one. C16, which is a tube, which is that one. C14, which is this housing here. C7, which is this housing here. Okay. I've got a feeling that MA4 is a metal bearing, so it's MA3, and I think. Sorry, I'm just going to check something, because metal bearings, these are solid polyphosphor bronze bearings, but they may be the ones that I replace with actual ball bearings. So MA, MA4 and MA3. So if I count how many there's one in there, I know how many I've got. So one in there, that's 6 in there, that's 7. 8 in here, that's 15. Plus 4 is 19, and I'm expecting that to be all of them. Yep, and I've got 19 of those. And I have MD7 is 4. And then MA4 there's 1. So that does indeed look like that's the entirety. Replacing all of those. I'm just checking because they're less easy to remove after the fact. So it does indeed look like it. So what I need to do is get out some ball bearings, which are in this pack here. Now then, one of them is a little tiny one. Well, I say a little tiny. It's tiny compared to the others, which is that one. And the MA3s, MA4, MA3, yeah, is that one. Now the MA7 is a very slightly different size. I also need a push rod out of bag A, which is in here. Not that bag. That bag. Now then, would you actually grease? That's an interesting thought. Whilst I'm doing that, I shall continue to get out the other elements, which are in the same bag. So I will want out of here this metal bar with teeth on the end. I will want this, stay there, this ball joint there, and this ball joint. The other two push rods will come to later. I've just lost something on the floor. Yep. And I only know I lost it on the floor because it fell on my foot. Over there. Now I also want some nuts. BA1, just a standard nut. I want 2 of them. There's one. This sometimes is like some of those puzzles where you have to sort of manoeuvre things around the puzzle board to be able to get them out of wherever. That's 2 of those. BA1, and now I want 2 BB3 bolts. So these are the ones I'm after, are dome headed, which is going to be that one. And the cuts over that side. So in this bag are cap headed and dome headed. The one I want is dome. There's another one. Okay, and I potentially also want the grease. Well, I'm not sure about the grease. The reason I'm not sure is this, what goes through 2 bearings. If you were using phosphor bronze bearings, which are a solid metal bearing, then you put grease on it, because what you want is the outer side of the bearing to stay still and this to spin on the inner surface of the bearing, and so you don't want it to grab, so you put grease on it. On the other hand, however, this is going through a ball bearing, and what you want to some extent is the outside to be still and the inside sort of to bond to the metal, and then it's just the ball bearings that rotate. So I'm not actually going to put any grease on this. So if I put grease on it, then the shaft will rotate in the bearing and maybe the ball bearing bit won't rotate. Then it's kind of pointless having the ball bearings, and also it would tend to wear out the inner surface of the ball bearing. And again, it becomes one of those, what was the point in the ball bearing? So I will leave that to one side, and that will get used for the gearbox, I think. So we will need some parts like this part here, which no, okay. Basic assembly. Let's start from the front. We start with this shaft, which is bidirectional, can go in either way, goes in there. We'll put one of these nuts, bolts on the outside. So this is really just to stop the end folding off the shaft.